The transport shuttle landed on the dusty platform of the mining station Varkos 7, its metal body shaking from the rough landing. Jack stepped out, his boots hitting the steel floor with a dull sound. The air smelled of oil and burnt metal, and the low hum of heavy machinery echoed in the distance. He had been sent here by the Human Engineering Corps to fix one of the main ore lifts that had stopped working. It was just another job to him, but he could already feel the stares from the alien workers around him. Most of them were tall, broad-shouldered, and covered in armor-like skin. They came from warrior clans where strength decided your worth. Jack was smaller compared to them, with only a slim build and his worn exosuit as he walked towards the central repair area. A shadow moved into his path. It was Kora, one of the mining station's most respected warriors. Her eyes were sharp and her voice deep. "So, you're the human they sent," she said, looking him up and down. "You don't look like you can even lift a bucket of ore." Her words made a few aliens nearby laugh. Jack didn't answer. He just walked past her and began checking the damaged ore lift. The machine was huge, made to carry tons of heavy metal from the deep tunnels. A massive crate sat beside it, waiting to be loaded. Kora leaned against a wall. Watching him, "Go on then. Show us your great human strength," she said, smirking. Jack bent down and tried to move the crate. It was heavier than he expected. His exosuit hissed as it assisted his muscles, but even then, his arms trembled slightly. More laughter came from the aliens. But Jack ignored it and kept working after a few minutes. He had the lift open and was repairing the main power lines. Sparks flew. The smell of burnt circuits filled the air, and Jack stayed focused. Kora tilted her head. Surprised that he didn't get angry or try to argue, he just did his work, calm and quiet, that made her irritation grow. Hours passed, and the repairs were almost done when a loud alarm suddenly blared across the station. A voice shouted through the comms, "Collapse in Tunnel 7, or container falling." Without thinking, Jack grabbed his toolkit and ran towards the tunnels. The lights flickered as he entered the narrow passage. The air was filled with dust, and the sound of groaning metal made the ground shake. At the end of the tunnel, he saw it. A massive ore container had slipped from its locks and was about to crash down. Beneath it was Kora, her leg pinned under a beam. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Human, get out. You can't lift this," she shouted, but Jack didn't listen. He rushed forward, his exosuit powering up to maximum strength. The weight was crushing, the metal screaming as it bent under pressure. Kora tried to push the beam off herself, but failed. Her hands clenched. Her usual confidence fading, Jack planted his feet, his muscles burning as he held the container. Sweat ran down his face, and the exosuit's warning lights flashed red. The container slipped slightly, and Kora gasped. "Don't let go," she whispered, her voice suddenly different, not mocking, but pleading. Jack's grip tightened. His teeth gritted, and with a loud yell, he shifted the weight just enough for her to pull free. He then dragged her away as the container crashed behind them. Sending a wave of dust through the tunnel, they stumbled into the open space outside. Both coughing, Kora leaned on him for support, limping on her injured leg. The alien miners stared at the sight, their strongest warrior being helped by the human they had laughed at. Jack didn't say anything. He just guided her to the medical bay. Kora kept glancing at him, her earlier insult now replaced by something she couldn't name. As the medics took her inside, she paused at the door. Her voice was low, almost too quiet to hear. "You didn't let go," she said. Then she disappeared inside, leaving Jack standing there, breathing hard, the weight of her words heavier than any ore container. The tunnel was still shaking when Jack stepped out. His hands felt heavy, his arms still numb from holding the ore container. The sound of metal groaning inside warned him the collapse wasn't over. He could hear shouts and alarms echoing from deeper inside the mining sector. Kora sat on the edge of the medbay cat, refusing to lie down. Her leg had a deep cut, and her armor was dented. The medic tried to push her back, but she shoved him away. "There are more people in there," she said, her voice sharp. "We can't leave them, Jack." Stood by the door, breathing slowly. His body told him to rest, but his mind wouldn't let him. "Where?" he asked. Kora pointed towards the lower tunnels. Team 4 was inside. They won't get out without help. Without waiting for orders, Jack grabbed a fresh oxygen mask and emergency beacon. Kora limped after him. "You're not going alone," she said, pulling her damaged spear from the weapon rack. Her voice was different now, less prideful, more determined. They moved quickly through the narrow corridors. The walls shook with every distant rumble. Loose dust and rock fell from above. The lights flickered on and off, casting long shadows. Every step they took was a gamble. At one turn, a blast of hot air rushed past them. Carrying the smell of burning metal, the ventilations failing, Jack muttered, checking his wrist. "Display, we have 20 minutes before oxygen drops too low in that section." They reached the entrance to the lower tunnels, but the doorway was blocked by fallen beams. Jack activated the cutting torch from his toolkit. Sparks flying as the metal gave way. Kora kept watch, her eyes scanning for more collapses. The sound of strained steel above made her grip her spear tighter. When the gap was wide enough, they squeezed through. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Visibility was poor. Only the beam from Jack's helmet light cut through the darkness. Somewhere ahead, faint voices called out. "This way," Kora urged. Her limp slowed her, but she pushed forward without complaint. Jack moved beside her, ready to catch her if she stumbled. They found the trapped miners huddled in a corner. A large pipe had fallen, blocking their exit. Two of them were injured. "We're here to get you out," Jack said. His voice was calm but firm. Kora knelt beside the wounded, checking their breathing. Jack studied the pipe. It was too heavy to move by hand. He looked at his exosuit's readout. It was already at 70% strain from the earlier rescue. If it overheated, he'd lose all power assist. Still, he stepped forward. Kora looked at him. "You'll burn out the suit," she warned. Jack met her gaze. "Then I'll lift it without the suit," he replied. He braced himself, gripping the edge of the pipe. The exosuit whined loudly, the servo straining slowly. The pipe began to move, inch by inch. A gap formed. "Go!" Jack shouted. The miners crawled out one at a time, Kora guiding them, just as the last one passed. The suit's alarms screamed, the servos gave out, and Jack was forced to drop the pipe. It hit the ground with a metallic crash, sending vibrations through the floor. Kora moved quickly to his side, grabbing his arm before he fell. "You're insane, human," she muttered, but her voice carried something like respect. With the injured supported between them, they made their way back through the tunnel. At one point, the ceiling gave a loud crack, and a chunk of rock fell. Jack pushed Kora aside, taking the hit on his shoulder armor. The force knocked him down, but he got back up, shaking off the pain by the time they reached the med bay. The oxygen levels had dropped dangerously low. The miners were rushed inside for treatment. The station commander arrived, his large frame filling the doorway. He looked at Jack, then at Kora, and gave a slow nod. "You brought them all back," he said. His voice was heavy with disbelief. On this station, such feats were expected from warriors like Kora, not from visiting humans. Kora glanced at Jack, her lips twitching as if she wanted to say something. Instead, she just gave him a short nod. Then, as the medics tended to the rescued crew, she walked over and spoke quietly. "You didn't have to go back in there," she said. Her tone wasn't mocking this time. It was questioning. Jack looked at her. "You were right. There were people in there who needed help. For the first time since they met, Kora didn't have a quick reply. She simply looked at him for a long moment, then turned away, gripping her spear tightly. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the way she saw this human had already begun to change. And though she'd never admit it out loud, she was glad he hadn't. Let go, not in the tunnel, not in the rescue, and maybe not in the future either. By the next morning, the mining station was buzzing with whispers. The story had already spread. The human engineer had not only saved Kora, one of their strongest warriors, but also gone back into a collapsing tunnel to rescue an entire crew. Every corner Jack passed, alien eyes followed him. Some were curious, some skeptical. And some clearly didn't like the attention he was getting. In the cafeteria, two miners spoke in low voices, but loud enough for him to hear. "That's him," one said, pointing subtly, the human who lifted the ore crate and pulled Kora. "Out," the other snorted. "Exosuit or not, no human should be able to do that." Jack ignored them and focused on his tray of synthetic breakfast. The food here was bland, but filling. He'd learned a long time ago that it was better not to respond to every comment. Kora entered a few minutes later, her leg wrapped in a medic brace. She walked with a slight limp, but carried herself like nothing had changed. The moment she stepped into the room, several miners called out to her, teasing, "Kora, where's your human shadow?" Another laughed, "Careful, he might save you again today." Kora's eyes narrowed. But she didn't snap back. Instead, she walked straight to Jack's table and sat across from him. The cafeteria went quiet for a moment. "You eat this every morning?" she asked, poking at his food. Jack nodded. "Keeps me going." The silence from the other tables was heavy. Everyone was listening, waiting for the next words. Kora leaned forward. "About yesterday," she began, then stopped. Her pride didn't. "Let her say thank you in front of the others, instead," she said. "You work fast for someone who's not a warrior." Jack gave a faint smile. "And you fight well for someone who's not an engineer." A few aliens nearby chuckled at the exchange, but there was a shift in the air. The mocking tone towards him had less bite now. Over the next few days, Jack kept working on the ore lift systems. The station's commander assigned Kora to assist him, officially for security, but everyone knew it was to see how they worked together. At first, the jobs were quiet, filled with only the hum of tools and the occasional question. But slowly, conversations began to fill the silence. Kora asked about Earth, about the strange blue oceans and cities full of lights. Jack asked about her homeworld, a place of endless deserts where massive beasts roamed. She told him how her people grew up learning to fight before they could even speak clearly, and he shared how he learned to fix machines before he could drive one. Still, not everyone was impressed. A few miners seemed determined to test him one day. While moving through the main cargo bay, a large alien named Rurak blocked Jack's path. His arms were as thick as metal pipes. "Human," Rurak said. "I heard you're strong." Without warning, he shoved a heavy crate toward Jack. "Prove it." Jack didn't rise to the bait. He simply stepped aside and let the crate roll past. Strength. "Strength isn't always about lifting," he said. Rurak frowned. Clearly disappointed, Kora, who had been watching, stepped up and put herself between them. "You'll have to get through me first," she told Rurak. Her voice was calm, but her stance warned him not to push further. Rurak grunted and walked away. That moment didn't go unnoticed. Rumors shifted again. Now people whispered that Kora was protecting him. Some thought it was because of debt. Others believed she had started to respect him. Later that week, the station's outer sensors picked up a massive plasma storm heading their way. It was rare, but deadly. The winds could tear small ships apart, and the electrical surges could fry the station's systems. The commander called for all critical crews to be on standby. Jack and Kora were assigned to inspect the emergency shield generators. They worked side by side as the storm approached. the air inside the station growing tense. The lights flickered, and the sound of distant thunder echoed through the metal walls. Halfway through their inspection, a call came over. The comms part of the outer ring was losing power. Several workers were trapped with no way to cross back to the safe zone. Without hesitation, Jack looked at Kora. "We're going," she nodded, and they ran for the maintenance bridge that connected the sectors. When they reached it, the sight made Jack's stomach tighten. The bridge was swaying under the force of the storm winds, sparks shooting from its damaged railings. Below was a drop into the swirling glow of the plasma storm. And the heat was rising. "Stay close," Kora said, stepping onto the bridge. Her movements were steady despite the danger. Jack followed, gripping the side as the wind roared around them. Halfway across, the structure gave a violent shudder, and one of the main support cables snapped with a sharp crack. Kora slipped, her foot catching on the edge. In an instant, she was hanging over the side, the storm's pull threatening to take her. Jack didn't think. He lunged forward, catching her wrist with both hands. The wind screamed in his ears, his grip burning from the strain. "Don't let go," she said again, her voice urgent. But trusting this time, Jack pulled with all his strength, his boots slipping on the wet metal. Inch by inch, he hauled her back onto the bridge. They both fell to their knees, breathing hard. The workers on the other side were still trapped, but the bridge held long enough for them to reach them. By the time they got everyone to safety, the station was sealed against the storm. Kora looked at him, her face unreadable for a moment. Then, the low voice meant only for him, she said, "That's twice now." Jack didn't answer, but the look they shared said more than words could. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the station, the bond between them was starting to grow stronger than either of them expected. The storm outside had not fully passed when the next problem hit. The main reactor deep in the core of the station flickered and went dark. Without it, the shields protecting them from the plasma winds would fail. The commander's voice came through the comms, sharp and urgent. "Reactor team, report to the core immediately. We are losing containment." Jack was already pulling on his gloves when Kora limped into the control room. Her brace was still on, but she had refused to stay in the med bay. "You'll need someone watching." "You're back," she said. Jack didn't argue. He knew the reactor levels were dangerous: high heat, toxic fumes, and unstable machinery. One wrong step could mean death. The path to the core was through a narrow service shaft. Pipes hissed steam above their heads, and the floor vibrated under their boots. The deeper they went, the hotter it became. Sweat formed under Jack's collar. The faint hum of the reactor was growing weaker, a sound no one ever wanted to. Here, when they reached the core chamber, the sight was worse than expected. Several coolant pipes had burst, spraying superheated vapor into the air. A section of the control panel was melted, and sparks danced in the dim light. A small group of engineers was already there, shouting over the noise. "We've lost stabilization in the secondary feed. If it overheats, the shields will collapse." Jack moved to the panel, quickly scanning the damage. "We need to vent pressure from the lower coolant valves," he said. The engineers hesitated. "Those valves are across the auxiliary bridge," one explained, "and the bridge is barely holding. No one can cross it in this storm." Kora didn't wait for debate. She grabbed her spear and turned to Jack. "We're going." Her tone left no room for argument. The auxiliary bridge was worse than the maintenance one they'd crossed before. This one hung over the reactor's deep containment pit. The air shimmered from the heat below, and the metal floor groaned with every step. Jack felt the vibration in his legs as he followed Kora across. Halfway, another tremor shook the station. A section of the bridge gave way, leaving a gap ahead. The only way forward was to jump. Kora went first. Landing on the other side with a clang, she turned, holding out her hand. "Come on." Jack jumped, catching her hand as his boots scraped the edge. She pulled him up, but the motion sent another shudder through the bridge. A loud metallic crack echoed, and part of the railing broke away. Jack's stomach twisted as the section they had crossed fell into the glowing depths below. They reached the coolant valves, only to find them jammed. Jack knelt beside the controls. Twisting the manual release, the metal was scorching hot. Burning his gloves, he gritted his teeth. Forcing it to turn, steam hissed out, releasing the pressure. Suddenly, burst pipe overhead snapped loose, spraying boiling vapor directly toward them. Kora moved without thinking, shoving Jack aside and taking the brunt of it on her armored shoulder. The heat scorched the metal, and she hissed in pain, but stayed upright. "Are you?" Jack began, but she cut him off. "Finish it." With one final twist, the valve locked into position. The reactor's hum began to steady, and the station lights flickered back to life. But there was no time to rest. The bridge behind them was still unstable, and the heat was rising. They turned to leave, but halfway across, the structure shifted again. A massive support beam above gave a groan, then snapped, falling toward them. Jack saw it coming and shoved Kora forward. The beam slammed down behind them, shaking the bridge violently. The last few meters were chaos. The bridge swayed. Metal screeched, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. Kora stumbled, her injured leg slowing her down without thinking. Jack hooked his arm under hers, dragging her the rest of the way. When they reached solid ground, the engineers rushed over. Sealing the chamber doors, the commander's voice came over the comms again. "Core stabilized, shields are holding. Good work, all of you." Jack sat down against the wall, breathing heavily. Kora leaned beside him, her armor still steaming from the heat. "That's 3 times now," she said quietly. Jack raised an eyebrow. 3. She nodded. "The tunnel, the maintenance bridge, and now the core. You keep holding on when most would let go." Jack gave a tired smile. "And you keep putting yourself in trouble for the first time?" She laughed, a low, rough sound. "But real. Maybe trouble finds me," she said. Her eyes met his for a moment longer than necessary before she stood. "Come on, human. Let's see if the station still stands." As they walked out of the core, the heat fading behind them, both knew this wasn't the last time they'd be tested. But with each challenge, the line between warrior and engineer, alien and human, was slowly disappearing, replaced by something neither of them fully understood yet. The plasma storm had passed, but the mining station still felt tense. Crews were busy repairing damaged sections, and the air was filled with the constant hum of machinery. Jack was back in the central workshop, fixing the ore lift he had originally been sent to repair. His tools clicked and hissed as he worked, but his mind kept drifting back to the core chamber. To the moment Kora had shoved him out of the way. Kora entered without a sound, though her presence filled the space. Her armor was still scorched from the heat, and the medic brace on her leg was gone. She walked with only a faint limp now. "You work even when no one's watching," she said, leaning against the wall. Jack didn't look up. "If I stop, the lift stays broken, and if the lift stays broken, you don't get your ore." Kora smirked faintly. "Always about the job," she said, but there was no mockery in her tone this time. The days that followed were different. Wherever Jack went, Kora was close by. Sometimes she helped him carry heavy parts. Other times she simply watched, learning how he worked. She began to notice the small details, how he double-checked every repair, how he kept tools clean, how he never rushed, even when the job was urgent. It wasn't the kind of strength her people admired, but it was strength all the same. One afternoon, they were called to inspect a cargo docking arm that had jammed. The arm was hanging halfway out into space, and the station's rotation made it swayed dangerously. They suited up and stepped into the docking ring, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the safety glass. Jack worked on the manual release while Kora stood guard, scanning the corridors for signs of trouble. A group of miners passed by, slowing when they saw the two together. One of them muttered, "Guess she's his bodyguard now." Another laughed. "Or maybe he's hers." Kora's sharp gaze cut to them, and the group quickly moved on. When they were gone, Jack chuckled under his breath. "Seems like you're more famous than me now." Kora crossed her arms. "Fame doesn't matter, only what you do when it counts." Later that evening, they sat in the cafeteria. The stares from others were still there, but now they were mixed with nods of acknowledgement. Some of the warriors even greeted Jack with small gestures of respect. It was subtle, but it meant something. Kora leaned closer, speaking in a low voice. "My people value strength above all else, but I'm starting to think we've been looking at it wrong." Jack raised an eyebrow. "How so?" She tilted her head. "Strength isn't just about lifting weight or fighting. It's about holding on, even when everything's falling apart." Jack thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Maybe you're stronger than you think." 4. Once Kora didn't have a comeback. She just looked at him with a strange expression before turning away. The next day, the commander called them both into the briefing room. A hollow map of the station's outer zones hovered in the air. Flashing red, "We've had reports of pirate activity near the asteroid belt," he said. "They'll target our ore shipments, and if they board, they'll head straight for our power core." Kora's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop them before they get close." The commander nodded. "I want you and the human to handle the cargo defense if they land a boarding party. It's your job to keep them away from the central systems." Jack knew this wasn't a repair job. This was combat, and though he'd seen fights before, this was different. This time, he wouldn't just be fixing broken machines. He'd be defending them. Kora looked at him. "You ready for this?" He tightened the strap on his tool harness. "I'm here, aren't I?" When the warning alarms blared a few hours later, the two of them were already in position. The pirates came fast, their small craft docking with the cargo bay in seconds. The airlock doors hissed open, and armored figures spilled inside, blasters raised. Kora charged forward with her spear, moving like a living shield. Jack stayed behind her, using his tools to override door controls and seal off access points. The pirates tried to push through, but Kora's strikes kept them back when one slipped. Past, Jack swung a heavy wrench, knocking the weapon from their hands. The fight lasted minutes, but felt longer by the time the station's security reinforcements arrived. The remaining pirates were retreating to their ships. The cargo bay was a mess of scattered crates and scorch marks, but the core systems were safe as the commander inspected the scene. He gave them both a rare nod of approval. "Good work," he said simply. Kora glanced at Jack and gave a small smile. "Not bad for someone who's not a warrior." Jack smirked. "Not bad for someone who's not an engineer." They walked out together, side by side. The whispers in the corridors had changed completely now. No one laughed at the human anymore. No one doubted Kora's choice to stand with him. Respect had been earned, not by titles or rank, but by actions. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both knew this wasn't the end of what they could achieve together. It was only the beginning. The first signs of trouble came from the long-range sensors. A sudden spike of movement in the asteroid belt, multiple heat signatures closing in fast. The commander's voice cut through the comms, sharp and tense. "All hands, prepare for combat. This is not a drill." Jack was in the workshop when the alert sounded. Chill. He grabbed his toolkit automatically, but before he could move, Kora appeared. In the doorway, already in full battle armor, her spear gleamed in the harsh light. "They're here," she said simply. The pirates weren't coming in small raiding craft this time. They had brought a warship, heavier weapons, more armor, and a full boarding crew. The station's defenses fired as soon as the enemy came into range. But the warship's shields absorbed most of the hits. It was only a matter of time before they broke through. Kora and Jack were stationed at the main engineering hub. If the pirates took this section, they could control the power grid and shut down the shields entirely. Jack worked quickly, reinforcing the security doors with manual locks. His hands moved fast over the controls. While Kora stood ready at the entrance, the first explosion shook the floor under their boots. Dust rained from the ceiling. The pirates had breached the outer cargo bay. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor outside. Kora glanced back at Jack. "They'll be here in seconds." The door shook violently as something heavy slammed into it. Jack stepped back, gripping a wrench in one hand. Kora's stance tightened. The metal groaned and then split open with a deafening crack. Pirates poured through, armed with blasters and shock blades. Kora met them head-on, her spear flashing in wide arcs. The clang of metal and the crack of energy weapons filled the air. Jack stayed low, moving between consoles, cutting power to sections the pirates tried to access, when one pirate charged at him. Jack swung the wrench with all his strength, knocking the attacker to the floor. The fight was brutal. The narrow space forced the pirates to come in small groups, but each wave seemed stronger than the last. Kora's armor was dented and scorched, her breathing heavy. Jack's arms ached from swinging tools as makeshift weapons. Then came a loud crash from above. The ceiling panel split open, and 3 pirates dropped into the room. One landed between Jack and Kora, slashing at Jack with a blade. Jack blocked with the wrench. Sparks flying, Kora spun, her spear striking the other 2 before they could aim. Jack's console beeped with a warning. He glanced down and his blood went cold. The pirates had sent a signal to overload the main power relays. If it triggered, the shields would fail, and the storm of fire from the warship would tear the station apart. "They're trying to fry the core," Jack shouted. Kora didn't hesitate. "Go, I'll cover you." Jack sprinted to the far panel, sliding across the floor to reach it. His fingers flew over the controls, rerouting the overload signal. Behind him, Kora fought like a storm, her spear cutting through the enemy line. He could hear her grunts of effort and the thud of bodies hitting the floor. A pirate broke past her and charged at Jack. Jack turned just in time to block, but the force of the hit knocked him to the ground. The pirate raised his blade for the killing blow, and then Kora was there, her spear driving through the attacker's armor. She hauled Jack to his feet. "Not today, human." The console beeped again, but this time it was green. Overload prevented. Systems stable. The warship outside took another barrage from the station's defense turrets, shields finally flickering under the pressure, realizing they had failed to take the core. The pirates began retreating. The last few seconds of fighting were a blur. Then the room fell silent, except for the hiss of damaged machinery. Kora leaned on her spear, her chest rising and falling with each breath. Jack was covered in sweat and grease, his hands trembling from adrenaline. They stood there for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. Then the commander's voice came over the comms. "Calmer now. Engineering hub secure. Enemy retreating. Shields holding. Good work." Kora looked at Jack, her face serious but her eyes softer than usual. "That's 4 times now," she said. Jack managed a weak smile. 4. She nodded. "The tunnel, the maintenance bridge, the core, and now this." Jack chuckled. "Guess we're keeping score now." Kora's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Maybe, but I'm still ahead," as the cleanup crews moved in. They walked out of the engineering hub side by side, bruised, battered, but alive, around them. Miners and warriors gave nods of respect. The human and the alien warrior, once strangers, now something far more than allies. The battle had been won, but both of them knew there would be more to come. And neither planned to let go. No matter what the galaxy threw at them next, The station had been repaired enough to return to normal operations. The plasma storm was gone. The pirate warship was long out of sensor range, and for the first time in weeks, the crew could breathe without the constant fear of another attack. Jack found himself back in the workshop, tightening bolts on the now fully functional ore lift. It was the same machine he had started with when he first arrived, yet everything felt different now. The sound of his tools was steady, but in his mind, he kept replaying the battles. The moments when holding on meant the difference between life and death. The door slid open, and Kora stepped in. Her armor had been cleaned and repaired, and the burns from the reactor fight were barely visible now. She still carried her spear, but it was resting loosely in her hand instead of clutched in readiness. She leaned against the wall, watching him work. "You never stop fixing things," she said. Jack looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "If I stop, something breaks." Kora tilted her head. "Even if it's not your problem." Jack gave a small smile. Especially then, they stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the machines filling the air. Kora finally spoke again. "The commander offered me leave. I could go home for the first time in years." Jack nodded. "Slowly, you should. You've earned it." Kora's gaze stayed on him. "I'm not sure I want to," she admitted. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Your family?" She shrugged. "They'll still be there. But things are different now." Word of their partnership had spread far beyond Varco 7. The story of the human who wouldn't let go and the alien warrior who stood at his side was being told in other stations, other mining colonies, even passing. Freighter crews whispered about it in the mess halls. Later that day, they walked through the market together. The usual stares were still there, but now most came with nods or small gestures of respect. A vendor handed Jack a piece of fruit without charging him, saying, "For the one who saved our station." Jack tried to refuse, but the vendor insisted. Kora smirked. "You're becoming popular." "Human?" Jack laughed. "You're just jealous." She pretended to scoff, but her eyes held a warmth that wasn't there before. That night, the two of them ended up in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The quiet was peaceful. The chaos of the last few weeks replaced by stillness. Jack leaned against the railing. "When I first got here, I thought I'd just fix a lift and leave." Kora's voice was softer now. "And I thought you were weak." Jack glanced at her. "You told me that more than once." She looked away, almost embarrassed. "I was wrong." The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but filled with the weight of everything unspoken. They didn't need to list the battles they had fought together, or the times they had pulled each other back from. The edge, it was all there in their eyes. Kora finally said, "When I told you not to let go, I didn't just mean in the tunnel." Jack's heart skipped, but he kept his voice steady. "I know." She gave a small nod. "Good." The weeks that followed were calmer, but they continued working together, whether it was fixing damaged systems, training the defense crews, or inspecting incoming shipments. They moved as a team without needing to say much. Others noticed how they seemed to know what the other would do before it happened. One afternoon, the commander called them into his office. "There's an offer from the Central Defense Fleet," he said. "They want both of you to join as a unit. They think your methods would be useful in higher-risk zones." Kora looked at Jack, and Jack looked back at her. It wasn't something they had planned, but they both knew the answer. "We'll go," they said at almost the same time. Their last day on Varco 7 was quiet. The crew gathered to see them off. Miners and engineers shook Jack's hand. Warriors clasped Kora's arm in the traditional grip. Even Rurak, the one who had once mocked Jack, gave a respectful nod. "Don't get killed out there, human." When they boarded the transport ship, Kora took the seat beside Jack. She didn't speak for a while, then finally said, "That's 5 times now." Jack frowned. 5. She counted on her fingers. The tunnel, the maintenance bridge, the core, the pirates, and the warship. Jack grinned. Guess we're keeping score after all. She smirked. Don't get too comfortable. I plan to even it soon. The engines roared to life, the stars outside beginning to blur as the ship left the station behind. Neither of them looked back. The galaxy was vast, and there would be more challenges ahead. More moments when one of them would have to hold on for the other, and as they sat side by side, ready for whatever came next, they both knew one thing. No matter how far they went or what dangers they faced, they would not let go.